So we start out with agenda revision and time allocation, and I would ask that we let item 7B2, the Ecuador trip, be bumped up to the beginning so that Mary Rizos can present that to us, and then we'll move on with the rest of our agenda. Do we have any other revisions that anyone would like to propose? All right, so Mary, please go ahead, and we should have this in our packets. It was attached to the agenda item, and if any of you got onto board docs and saw, you can see it there as well. So you're on.
Thanks so much, and I'm just here really to answer any questions that you have about that information that I shared. We are planning to take a 2-week trip when school is out in June. And to go to Ecuador, where we will spend a few days in the capital city, but most of our time staying in a small agricultural town, and staying in host families and participating in cultural celebrations, and just really digging into one specific place and building relationships there. I was able to go in June with my professional development funding, which is really what allowed me to connect with the people who we will be traveling with, and really allowed me to get to know them and visit their site and visit their host families, and wrap my head around what that will be like as an experience for our students. So the information that I shared with you in that document is pretty much the same information that I shared with parents. It's been pretty important all along to be transparent about all of those aspects of travel, of safety, of how many students will be staying in host families. And so we have ended up having 9 students going on this trip. We're also taking 3 chaperones. So that too, just, you know, I've never actually been on a trip where someone doesn't get sick or get hurt, and just having 3 people really makes me feel like we're prepared with those numbers. So happy to answer any questions that you've got.
Anyone have any questions? All right, I think it sounds like a terrific trip, and I think the partner organization is really wonderful, and that opportunity to have that level of interaction with people in that country just sounds fabulous, and to have 3 adults with 9 students sounds like a really great ratio. And I can just say, like, I had the opportunity to go to Ecuador last summer, 2 summers ago, and spent my whole time thinking about, like, what would it be like to bring students here? And it's just an amazing opportunity.
Great, well, thanks so much.
All right, do we want to go ahead and vote to approve that? Or do we want to, okay, so I would entertain a motion to approve the Ecuador trip for June 17th to 30th, 2024.
So moved.
All right, moved by, no, it's moved by Rebecca, seconded by Nate. All those in favor, show of hands. All right, pass by show of hands. Okay, so that, I guess the other question, the National Honor Society, we don't have anyone here in person to present that, right? That's a pretty standard thing. We'll come back to that, I think, when we get to that item on the agenda. So let's now move on to our general public comments. And here's what I would ask, is that if anyone has things that well, feel free to say things, and what we may respond with is, like, that's coming up later in our agenda, and so thank you for that comment, or, you know, we'll hear it otherwise. So do we have any comments from the general public? Let's start with those who are in the room. Anybody here wishing to share anything? Yes, go ahead.
Charles Smith, for the answer. I just want to know, I have 2 questions to ask the board. That is the board aware that the school submitted paperwork for block grant Act 173 for a budget? Well, it was 2020, 2022, 2023 was last year, and then this year was then already submitted for 2023, 2024.
And remind us of Act 173. What are we talking about?
I'm sorry, Charlie, what was the question?
Did RSD submit the proper paperwork or any paperwork for the block grant back 173 that was passed in 2018? But it never actually went into effect until 22-23. In 2021 to 2022, paperwork was to be filled out for the 2022-2023 block grant, Act 173 special education.
So yeah,
All
so
of
this
the
is,
paperwork's been
Yeah.
submitted. Yes,
Right.
yes,
For
the
the new
paperwork
law-
has been
For the
submitted.
new law back 173. block
yes,
grant.
yeah,
And
Yes,
2023, 2024.
yes,
Thank you. The second one is, this is on a, incident yesterday at the academy. And, our daughter's phone got broken. I was asked to see the video. Since there was a video, I was told no due to a privacy. Even though there are kids taking videos of other kids at the academy, showing videos, kids outside the classroom. And as a parent, as an incident, I was told that there is a policy that parents cannot see the video of an action of a child. So I've been told by the principal of the academy and the superintendent that agreed and said that there's a policy. Is there a policy that on a situation where damage is done, that the parent is not allowed to observe that video?
I don't know if there's a specific policy, but I think what was being referenced is, the rights of other students in this particular instance.
The right to what?
The rights of other students in that particular instance. And the video, my understanding is that it's been reviewed by the administration. And if there was something that was with malintent or, people getting hurt, like you would be notified of that and there would be consequences for.
Physically, somebody wasn't being hurt, a phone got damaged, $100 worth of damage. So, that as a parent, I want to view that video to see if two sides of the story match, which I'm saying one doesn't make sense. I was told through an email from Mr. Glennon that said it's policy. I want to know from the school board, show me the policy.
It's not policy. We don't have a
Okay,
policy.
so there is no
So-
policy.
my understanding though is that the school has a responsibility to protect the privacy of the minors who are, and the students who are within their charge. And so that they cannot necessarily share information that is private to individual students. So that, and I would say if you have further concerns, let's try to, handle this outside of this meeting, but what we're hearing from our administrators is that the school has a responsibility to protect the privacy of the students under their jurisdiction.
We never let anyone except the administration look at the video to make a determination of the story. Parents come, if it was a bullying act, fight or something, it's our job to look at that tape and do the investigation and find out what was going on. And that's what we adhere to. Otherwise, it becomes open court. And that's our
So
job.
we have two other witnesses saying something different, and I can speak on video.
So this is not public comment. If you have an issue, with this
But
particular
but
situation.
there, I was given the email, and I have it, that says it was policy. This is the school board that handles policy.
And I told you, to my
Okay.
knowledge, we do not have a policy.
So you misspoken on policy. What else have you misspoken on?
Charlie, come on.
Not,
Enough.
Barrett, not, come on,
Every meeting,
because I'm getting tired of the runaround
there's no
that the
run.
administration, no, I'm getting tired of the runaround the administration keeps on giving me and my wife.
Okay,
There is no policy.
let's schedule a meeting, Charlie,
There is no policy there, correct?
that I'm aware of now.
Okay.
Right. There's a responsibility of our
But
administrators,
there
and
is no
and I would
policy.
hope
We will
that-
continue this.
right, okay,
But that's what I want to know from the school board.
Okay.
Once they said it's policy, I looked everywhere and there is none.
and I would hope that you would want the administrators to protect the privacy of your own children as well.
You know how much stuff is out on YouTube?
Okay, that's great.
But
Okay.
Jack, you want to bring that up on YouTube, there's kids on the policy that's against Berber left and right with the kids on YouTube.
Charlie,
No,
all due respect, this is not the situation we need to bring this.
But it's about policy.
And you've already established the information you sought, and now it's time to move on to general public comment.
all right, thank you. Do we have anyone else? Any other comments? Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
I don't, where should I be? I guess.
Speak toward this little thing in
Yeah.
the middle here.
I don't see all those
People on,
stands.
online here.
Projecting.
Yeah.
My name's-
Project your voice.
My name's Andy Stevenson. I teach first grade at San Memorial Elementary School. It's year 16 of working in schools. I've seen a lot of different things. I've seen a lot of children struggle with loss of loved ones, tragedy in life, returning to school after a school shooting. I've seen a lot. I've helped kids in a lot of different situations. The last 2 days have been brutal for me. I have 2 kids in my classroom that I'm aware of that they think their school's closing, and I'm here to advocate for my students' needs. That I understand there's a lot of tough decisions that need to be made, but there's how those decisions are being made and how they're being articulated. There needs to be a plan where the children are really thoughtful about how it's communicated, so that children aren't coming to school with, my school's closing, what's gonna go on, this is my safe place. This may generally be the only place they are safe. And I know that I'm prepared to handle things in the classroom, but I don't know, I've done a good job of keeping it quiet, and these kids are keeping it quiet, but like, there's this perception of kids that they plan to go through school at San Memorial until 5th grade, and they're so uncertain. And I'm here to, I want to really push for changing the narrative from this is a budget decision to this is a kid decision, because the actions of adults aren't supporting kids right now. And I'm someone that is living it, and I'm here, and I'm not one to, my poor wife right now is the only one I don't get, but like, we need kids, and their needs need to be put first, and how it gets communicated could really be better, could really help the kids out. I feel like I'm someone in the trenches right now of my current students are 6 and 7, and they're, potentially, I understand what you said at the start, Kathy, about this might be later, but they're worried about where they're gonna go to school and what that's gonna look like. And I'm just here advocating for them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. All right. Anyone else in the room? Anyone online? You can just go ahead and unmute if there's something that you want to share in this public comment phase.
Yes, Kathy, I'd like to, it's Ian Green from Orford. I'd like to just thank Barrett for his response to 4 questions that I submitted last week, and he was very prompt in his responses, and it was very helpful. So I just wanted to commend on that. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? All right. So we're going to move on to our consent agenda of the minutes from our October 3rd board meeting. Do we have any comments or questions? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes as written. Unless, Sarah, you're getting ready for. Okay, all right, I'll move by Nate. Anyone like to seconded by Sarah Molesworth? All those in favor? All right, all those opposed? I do, just related to that item, Sarah Day, who is not here, I wanted to register. She had a comment She said, regarding the minutes from the October meeting, is it possible to add a notation to the minutes once they are passed that expresses my sincere apologies as a board member for not aggressively pursuing updates on our ADA compliance mandates? We should be serving all students in an equitable manner, and we underperformed in this case. So I think it's just worth noting and sort of putting that into the record that she feels it, and I think many of us do feel that. I don't think it's something we can add to the minutes because we didn't say it in the moment, but upon reflecting on that, I think many of us feel that way. All right, that moves us on to the monthly finance update. Nancy.
Hi. So hopefully you got the, two reports in your board packets. The budget and actuals for revenue and expenditures. With the expenditures, you may notice that I sort of moved categories around, based on input, over the last couple of months from people on the board saying they'd like to see some things grouped closer together. So just email me feedback if you think that that's helpful or not helpful or whatever. I can make it permanent, but I can also play with it beforehand. As far as expenditures go, we're currently on track. I am a little concerned because I know there's some upcoming capital expenditures that may change that reporting a little bit. I know we've had repairs to the elevator, that bill I haven't seen yet. I know we have to replace a grease trap at the academy. And hopefully that will be less expensive than the grease trap at Samuel Mori. And I believe that they're planning some work at this building as well. So hopefully we can just juggle things and keep everything on track, but I will keep you updated. I think revenues look to be in good shape at the moment. We not reflected on this report. We just, in November, received payments from all three of the Vermont towns. And so anything that's above and beyond what our immediate needs are going to be for the next couple of months, I will put into the New Hampshire deposit investment account to increase our interest revenue. Today, the Vermont School Boards Association and the Vermont Superintendents Association hosted a webinar on Act 127. This webinar was basically to provide an overview of Act 127 plus highlighting a number of other pressures that are going to be influencing the FY25 budget. I found it to be very informative. It was a very good sort of high level view. I did forward all the board members invites before, but it was only on Monday. So I'm not sure how many of you got to attend.
I did.
Okay, you did, Nate did, I know. When we get the video, the recording and any other supplementary information, I was gonna ask Brenda to share it on board docs so that you all have access to it.
Nancy, will you be able to go to the one that is specifically designed for business managers?
I intend to.
Okay.
I've already sent in my registration
Thank
for
you.
that.
Good.
That's at the beginning of December.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's sort of what I have to say about that. I glanced at the VSBA website and they have a lot of valuable information there. I would encourage anyone and everyone to take a look at it because it is very helpful.
And so, just to be clear, this is information that will impact tax rates in the Vermont towns in this upcoming cycle.
Yes,
And we will know the impact on Rivendell When? Mid-December?
So on December first, the treasurer for the state of Vermont sends out his December 1 letter.
Right,
Among other things, it guesstimates the yield, which, as we know, has a huge impact. The AOE, Brad and Nicole have already sent us calculators to, again, guesstimate the new long-term weighted ADM for FY 25. They have already pre-calculated what they long-term weighted ADM for FY 24 and FY 23 would have been had they been using the Act 127 calculations. So we'll be able to compare fruit baskets, apples to apples, as opposed to apples to oranges, because equalized pupils and long-term weighted ADM are very different animals. And there's a lot to be said about it. There's a lot to unpack with that, with Act 127. But we will have the long-term weighted ADM from the AOE on or around the 15th of December. And I will be able to share the December 1 letter with you at the board meeting in December.
and any early sense of how Rivendell will be affected?
Well, the idea of Act 127 was to give disadvantaged districts, i.e. districts with higher poverty levels, less people per square mile, and smaller schools, more taxing capacity. We don't have a similar act in Vermont, in New Hampshire.
Exactly, so this is only affecting the Vermont.
It will only affect, this will affect Vermont
Right.
taxpayers. We will get added weights for all of those. So it advantageously affects us. However, we will have to be mindful when we create our budget of the New Hampshire side of the river, which doesn't have that. There have been a little bit of increase in adequacy aid from the state of New Hampshire, which will help a little. But they've taken away some things, so they have to dive into all of that part of it, which I haven't.
Questions, comments, Doc?
Are there any concerns that this will be retroactive or just specific to this upcoming budget year?
It's not retroactive.
Okay.
It takes effect for fiscal 25.
And did I see correctly, there's sort of like a 4-year phase-in period?
It doesn't phase in the weights. What it does is that there's particularly so some districts will have more taxing capacity, so they could maintain, and this is all based on the homestead tax rate before you apply CLA.
Right, that's a big.
Yes,
Right.
it's a huge before, because the minute you start applying the CLA, all bets are off. Because in small towns that have only a few houses, if one house sells for, 20% above your assessed value, your CLA is gonna tank. So that's the first piece of it. There are some caps in place on that base homestead tax rate, to help what they're calling the losing, they don't want to use losing, the disadvantaged
It'll pay more.
districts. So some districts are gonna have a significantly lower increase in long-term weighted ADM, which means that I'm digressing a little, we were talking at the VASBO meeting on Friday. One district can add $8 million to their budget and still have the same base tax rate a projected base tax rate as they do this year. Another district is gonna have to cut 3 or 4 million to get to that tax rate. So that's where the phase in, is in the increases in tax rate. So they're putting some caps on how much a tax rate can increase, the homestead tax rate can increase per year. But that has some other unintended circumstances involved with it, which may tank the yield and affect everybody.
Because that
So,
money has to come from somewhere.
yes, so what Brad James said to us was, it's a statewide system. The mandate in the state of Vermont and in law is that, let's see if I can find where I wrote it. That all students are entitled to an equal education, to equal access to education. And so they've created a statewide system that you really can't control, because it's all based on school budgets. Right now, the business managers have told Brad that the combined increase that they're thinking that they're gonna see over all the districts is over 12%. That may not be the case. Last year it was 8 and it ended up being 10. So maybe this year it's 12 and it'll end up being 8. So we don't know. We don't know. There's a lot of unanswered questions right now. And I think that we really need to look at what dollars we need to provide the best education for the students that we have, and not talk about tax rates until we have something a lot more concrete to really look at. And the AOE is saying, we don't know what's gonna happen. So I certainly am not gonna even project any ideas or any thoughts about what might or might not happen.
All right, well, it's probably a deeper dive than, if you ever wanna, do you think?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I always put in a plug here that like, if you could design a more convoluted way of funding education
Oh,
in a
it's
state,
Insanity.
I mean, you should win a prize, because it's completely nuts, how we do it. And
Yes.
it's so complicated, and there's so many, because it's so complicated, it's like, you know, it's like a Jenga, right?
Mhm.
And you start pulling on one piece, and it's not necessarily the piece that's next to it that starts wiggling. It's like a piece down there in the corner that you weren't expecting. And the state's right now trying to figure out
And that's exactly what's happening.
what piece is wiggling, because they know it's gonna be somewhere, and it's a mess. So
Right.
tell your state legislators that the state should come up with a much more straightforward way of funding public education, because what we have is completely
And it's
nuts.
a series of steps, each adding a new layer of complexity.
Each well-meaning,
Each well-meaning and each designed to be more fair.
right?
But anyway, so,
Mhm.
yeah, thank you for all that. Any questions on the monthly report of finances? All right. Let's then move on to the ADA update.
Yeah, so some good news finally, which is, long time coming at this point. So the elevator parts arrived yesterday and they installed them this morning. The elevator is currently up and running, which is perhaps the biggest relief that we've had since the start of school. That's had a real negative impact on many different people, teachers, students. So just really happy that has been able to be taken care of. The van window, we had to take it to the van shop in Bradford. It's called East Coast Vans. So I'm going to give them a plug for doing this. They designed a custom window, which is temporary, which is now in the van. And when the actual window that has the hinge on it comes in, we will then bring it back there and then we'll install that. So 2 good pieces of news there. The auto door openers, been replaced and installed in the lower academy building. They're scheduled to complete that work in the upper academy the week of Thanksgiving break when students are out of the building. And yeah, I think that's the update for the ADA accommodations.
Is there a warranty on those ADA oak door openers, but do you know how long they last?
I don't know. I'm sure that there are, but I don't know.
Fair enough.
Any other questions? That's great news. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Have we, sorry,
Yes, go ahead.
have we heard from the feds at all about the pending Office of Civil Rights?
So they did contact me finally, after after several emails, and I think, from the family as well. It's still, I mean, basically what they've said to me is that there's no findings. And that, as long as we are continuing to work, on improving our buildings, that, that at this time we're in good shape moving forward.
That sounds like a good result.
Great. Strategic plan. Barrett, you want to say something about that?
Sure. We had our first subcommittee meeting, which was well attended. We went through a PowerPoint to kind of just walk people through, a strategic plan, different components of the strategic plan, which I hope was helpful. We looked at materials and components of a usable document. So one thing that I really wanted folks to understand is, like, people write strategic plans all the time, and I call them dust collectors. And I have for years, because oftentimes you write them and somebody puts them on a shelf, they collect dust, and then they break them out 3 years later and figure out that we haven't actually measured any outcomes or measured any goals, and then it's too late. So we talked a lot about the idea of, writing goals, writing 3 objectives for each goal, to try to keep it as simple as possible, and then having a measurable outcome with somebody assigned to the responsibility of a timeline and when it's going to be measured and how we're going to report it out to the board and all those things. I think, one of my hopes that comes out of this is that we have a plan, and just like we do on certain things, we have a monthly agenda item that basically says strategic plan, review or revision or measured outcomes, and kind of approach it from that perspective. So I felt like that was good. Our next meeting is actually December 19th. Couldn't find that date this morning when I was looking for it, but I did find it. And in conjunction with that, at our ad team meeting this morning, we talked about the admin team actually doing parallel activities as the strategic plan committee. So in some ways they're working parallel, but can also then compare and contrast, the goals and objectives that they've created. So that's an added component to it, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Great. Thank you. Any questions, comments on that? Great. One thing that struck me is that we did have additional people who had wanted to be on the steering committee who weren't able to make that meeting. And I want to make sure that that they know when the next meeting is and that they have the opportunity to join one of the subcommittees.
Sure. No, I think we have the list of people that we know of, and we'll send out a notice for the meeting on December 19th.
But I think also maybe give them, here are the list of the subcommittees, would they like to join one of those? If that would be a useful thing. And it seems like we should continue to think about ways that the work of the admin team and that group can be interacting with each other. And it occurred to me that, it may be helpful as people look at the different pieces. Well, what is currently happening in the schools? What do the administrators see as the next steps? And how do we interact with those? That's great. Anything else? All right, that moves us on to new business, and we have a resignation.
Sorry, but you missed the budget form recommendations.
Oh my gosh, I said, that is hilarious, that big, I tried to say hilarious, but
Nice.
our big ticket item, I just jumped right over. Let's move on to 6C, the budget forum recommendation. And Barrett, why don't you start off with presenting that, and it is in our packet, so we have that.
Yeah, so I think that this was made a public document, and I know that all the board members got this. We sent it out last week. So essentially, again, our admin team came together, looked at all of the information that was compiled from the community forums, conversations that, you know, we had as an administrative team. And, you know, this is the proposal that we're putting forward, based on that information. And I think it, I mean, I can read it if people want, but, I think it's, if you have questions about it, I'm happy to answer questions, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
I think at least for people in the audience, you probably should give an outline of it.
Okay. So I'm gonna stand up. One, because my back hurts, and two, because I think I can project better to those in the back.
And how are folks doing online and being able to hear what Barrett's saying? Yeah, great,
Okay.
yeah.
So first, obviously, we acknowledged the board and certainly Kathy for the work that you guys did in designing the forums and being a part of the forums, facilitating some of those forums. I know that it was incredibly challenging, lots of moving pieces, so certainly there was a lot of work there on your part as a board, and we appreciate that. Like I said, we looked at the information, and so after careful consideration, the administrative team recommends a 3-year budget approach that will reduce costs, improve educational outcomes and experiences, and allow for long-term planning and implementation. So those were like 3 key components that we heard from those meetings. All right, so finances, improved education, and basically time to plan and implement any changes that we have. And so our recommendation for the upcoming year is to maintain a status quo. And we would do that, we would reduce the budget in that status quo with using surplus money and going through line item by line item to try to reduce the budget as much as possible, you know, in the areas that we have control over. So we're reducing the budget, maintaining our level of staffing for the year 1, but we would have surplus money to reduce the overall budget impact from last year. The second year for FY 25-26, we would start the planning next year, but in FY 25-26, we would look at a multi-age approach at the elementary level. We would certainly look at efficiencies at the academy as well. That would save us money. It would also move us towards a multi-age model in terms of educational quality. And, you know, we feel like there's benefits to that, not just financial. And then the third year would be consider closing Samuel Morey School. There's a significant savings in doing so, in which you could then reinvest into the resources and the programming that we currently offer, and move those students to the academy building. So yes, it's closing a school. It's still keeping them, you know, in their, you know, they still have an elementary school that they'd be attending, and then it would allow for some creative educational experiences for kids. So that's a general outline. I know that this is a recommendation. This is, you know, the board still is going to deliberate. You're going to make decisions based on what you think is going to be best. And yeah, so if you have questions, I'm happy to try to answer those.
All right, questions, comments?
Oh, I just wanted to make a quick clarification, just so everyone's on the same page, that the recommendation in front of us for next year is a status quo except for the ESSER funded positions, which would not be funded under the recommendation.
That's correct.
Right.
Which is how we had presented.
Exactly. I
Status
just
quo.
wanted to be exact,
Yeah.
because he said retain all staff and.
Yeah.
Retain all staff.
Yeah,
except-
so on the back page, you see, kind of the spreadsheet, which I think does outline that.
Right, no, I just wanted to.
Yep.
Wanted to say it.
Stop.
Question on year two, do you think that there'll need to be scaffolding in year one for professional development for the multi-age model?
I'm not sure what you mean by scaffolding.
Like as in, doing sort of proactive trainings ahead of time of year, and then it's an investment for the second year.
I mean, I think the whole, everything that we've heard, from comments and posted notes and things like that is, if we're gonna do this, let's take the time, plan it and do it well. And, this essentially would give us, an entire year to be able to do that.
Rebecca.
Sorry, I think the multi-age, so this would be the year two, and then the configurations would change again and for year three?
Well, the configurations wouldn't change in 3 here, right? So we'd still have the Westshire school.
Right,
as it
but
is.
the multi-age classes that you're.
Would
I haven't-
continue
we
in
haven't-
year three as
We
well.
haven't proposed any structure in terms of the multi-age and what that looks like, but the hope would be that we would continue to offer multi-age, regardless of where it was, when it was, when you think about number of students and whether it's appropriate.
So year two would have multi-age at Westshire, multi-age at Samuel Morey, likely more at Westshire where the classes are smaller. And then year three would continue to have multi-age at Westshire, would move the population from Samuel Morey to Rivendell Academy, continuing with multi-age in whatever
Where
fashion that
appropriate.
looks like. where appropriate.
I'm just concerned about a lot of transitions happening, especially for the Samuel Morey students. We're doing like the year two kind of multi-age switching around, and then we're changing a location. That's a lot of transitions for students. And that's rough.
Other questions?
Like I
comments?
said, this is the board's decision. This is
Yeah.
our recommendation.
Although looking at the class size numbers at Samuel Murray, it doesn't. You're not gonna combine every, you're not gonna combine to the level that it makes sense to like there.
But I just feel like we're doing this multi-age thing for budgetary reasons, and that's
I don't-
not how
it's
it's
not.
gonna stick.
I don't feel like
I've
that's,
said that for 3-4 years now. I've not approached it from a budgetary standpoint. I came from a district that taught multi-age, and I saw the benefits of it, and I think there is good educational value to offering or running multi-age school.
I'm just concerned because we had multi-age and then we stopped doing multi-age. And like, so it never really stick.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it was not a great experience when one of my kids went through it. And I'm glad it didn't stick at that point.
I've reached out to a few different districts around the state that do multi-age elementary, just asking, how does it feel? And I've actually managed to find some parents in some of these districts and ask them how it feels. And what I heard is basically what you would expect, or at least sort of what I expected, that the benefits are when you have a really small class size and a kid doesn't necessarily click with the 5 other people in their class. It's really nice to suddenly have a class of like 15 where there's much more opportunity to find someone who you click with and where there can be multiple groups of kids rather than just like the group and then like the kid or the 2 kids who are not in the group. So from a social perspective, when you have really small class sizes, that can be a benefit. There's lots of people that make arguments about education. I heard it both directions. People who felt like it was a great opportunity for kids to reach up higher and for kids who are a little ahead to help out the kids who are a little behind and, you know, things like that. I also, you know, frankly, the number one thing I heard from parents was that they didn't get along with the teacher the first year. They were sad that they were gonna have to be with that same bad teacher the second year. I mean, that's just what I heard, you know, and that's, you know, no one wants to think that you're gonna have a teacher who you don't get along with, but that did seem to be the number one, you know, thing that parents said. So, for what it's worth.
And the flip side is the built-in benefit of looping that happens with that, where a teacher is with a group of students for 2 years and can see that development, and so knows that. Right?
Not starting from zero every year.
Right, not starting from zero with every child every year. I certainly haven't done any exhaustive research, and it seems to me like if we want to accept these recommendations, the very first thing to do is to form some study committees that would have wide representation on them to look at an implementation plan, to develop an implementation plan, and then it would involve some systematic outreach to find out what are the best practices, you know, and I would say anecdotally, I have a sense that if this was absolutely like thought of as the best way to do education in this country, then maybe we would see multi-age classrooms everywhere.
Yeah.
It
never
is a
sticks.
way that small schools can operate, and so if maintaining small schools is a really high value, then it's one of the ways of doing it. And I think there are the schools that do it best are the ones that have made that commitment and said this is part of, you know, who we are and what we want to do. Yeah, at this point, it's discussion with the board, so unless Vanessa or Dave have things, we're just at this point, taking comments from the board, so thank you for that. Other comments? Yeah,
It's your turn.
So, education at Rivendell is really complicated. On the one hand, we don't have a lot of flexibility because of size in some ways. I'm thinking of the academy. On the other hand, we have a tremendous amount of flexibility because we're small, we can do crazy things. So we just put 2 7th graders in 10th grade geometry class because that's where they can function. And we did that. It took backflips. Their high school trajectory was much different than it would if it went through the normal situation. But it was the best thing to do for the kids. And so that's why we did it. And I think multi-age is a misnomer because it's not, we're stuck on this age grouping, you know? And it's not the age that matters, it's the range of performance of the kids. And so if we change how we think, I mean, and that's the complex piece, right? So, you know, we loop the curriculum in 7th and 8th grade science. One year they have physical science, the next year they have biology. Doesn't matter if they're in 7th grade or 8th grade, we just make that curriculum work for those 2 levels of kids. So, one idea I would like to throw out is a lot of everything that's being said, both Sam Morey, you know, whatever. All these things are all kind of very theoretical. I will throw out a suggestion that we do some kind of dry run experimental thinking. So if we ask Sarah and Steve and their teachers to sit down, take some time and say, if you were going to do multi-age at both schools today, what would you do? Why would you do it? How would you do it? And what could it look like? And run through it in kind of a theoretical model before, I mean, this year, and do that thinking now and see what you come up with. My hunch is that, you know, that the complex thing is these bubbles of classes. Sometimes we get big classes, then we've got small classes, and then where that bubble goes and how it plays out throughout a student's trajectory is complicated. So what would it look like if we had to do that today, and how, get everybody's input in it, get the teachers thinking about it, and everybody run through it in a very theoretical way and see what it would look like. And then bring that back to the board and say, here's what it would look like. And that would ground us more.
Yeah, my comment was kind of,
Tabletop
Yeah.
exercise. It's when you actually do the thing on the table rather than doing it for real and the things come out of it. It's called a tabletop exercise.
my comment was kind of same vein, I guess, is, like, has there been more discussion with the staff who are here on these options and what they think the future of this district? And I mean, have their questions been answered that they asked us in the last meeting? We have the answers to their questions and.
Yeah, I failed to give the board an update on that, but I did respond with a long letter and meet with staff at Westshire. I'll share that with the board.
And then I'm also concerned that, and this kind of also relates to first grade teacher, forget your name, sorry.
Andy,
Andy. That using this conversation, this term of closing a school is a very harsh term. And if you're closing a building, it hurts the district's image to say we're closing. I mean, you're gonna use the building, like, what is the plan? If you can't just close all block the door. I mean, there's gotta be like a future plan. Are you planning on selling the building, or is it planning on being transformed into some other purpose? I'm just concerned about the way the conversation is going on this.
I mean, I think I outlined it in what I shared with you, what the plan would be. So if you, I don't know what terminology we should be using, but if we were to close Samuel Murray, we would have to determine the value of the property. We certainly would want to work with the Barrett Select Board and, communicate with the Ridgely community about, what that's going to look like moving forward. If the property value is at $10 million, you reinvest that into education. And that's the part where, what I think the approach we were thinking about is, you get us out of this annual cycle, budget cycle, where all you're talking about is cutting budgets, reducing tax rates when inflation is going up 7% and, it's a failed model. Like, we got to break that cycle. There has to be something different. Otherwise, we're going to be doing the same thing every single year.
I get that we have this, we're in struggle, I get that.
Yeah, in order to do that, if you look at our numbers and you look at the information from all of the, the budget forums, you could close a building, we'll just say close a building. I think it is what it is. But you're gonna have money generated as revenue that you can reinvest in education.
So you're selling the building.
I think.
or renting.
I think the term is repurpose.
You can repurpose it if you wanted to rent it, but I think personally selling it would be the most advantageous, not only to the district, but to the town of Fairfield. They could use that property they could use it for whatever they wanted. They could find, investors to come in and develop housing, develop whatever it is they wanted or felt like they needed. So that's, it's not that we don't care about that school or that school community. It's thinking about it on a larger scale, and perhaps, the messaging, this is all like the first time anybody's even talking about it, because quite honestly, I think people are afraid to talk about it. And it's something that I think that the board has to have discussions about, ongoing discussions, and make hard decisions. And it's a recommendation, I've made recommendations every year that people ignore, so it's not gonna hurt my feelings.
And we appreciate your recommendations. It gives us a starting point for our discussions.
I think the part I want to take away from that though is there's a real opportunity to improve education. And so
Right.
the main thing that I heard from all those community forums, and my main takeaway is like, let's frame this in terms of education. How can we improve education? Well, that is a very quantified way to do that. You're gonna have a significant amount of money that you can then reinvest in education. You can look at, having your specialist teachers full-time. You can look at bringing immersive language into your elementary schools at both campuses. You can look at outdoor education programs, farm to school programs that are even more robust than what we currently get. Like, those are the things, when I think about good education, that's what I want for this district. That's what I want for our children. And I think this is an avenue to get you there. Whether it's the right avenue.
Looked into like the cost of, like, just to say we're going with this idea of moving the Samuel Morey student body
Mhm.
and staff to the academy campus. And wherever they may be in that campus, there's gonna be a ton of costs involved in, like, I think, adjusting the spaces for elementary students.
Well, the elementary school used to be there.
Yeah, but there are a lot more rules now.
It seems like, that all becomes part of the assignment to an implementation committee, is to really look at all of those things. But at this point, what would be helpful is to say, of the breadth of options that we've looked at thus far, here's where we would like to put some energy into developing some ideas, knowing full well that we might end up in a very different place down the road. I guess something that strikes me in listening so far to what we've said about the multi-age classrooms, if we were to give a charge to an implementation study committee, or however we wanted to term that, it seems like we would charge them with it being student-centered, looking for opportunities to enhance our educational program and align with our values that we're already moving towards of enhancing project-based learning, aligning with Rivendell's vision, and coming up with something that would be robust and flexible enough to deal with the fluxes that we have going down the road. If we say, like, we see this overall trend, and it's not a drastic enrollment drop, but it's an overall trend that we see within our district and within the state and the region. So how can we be ready to adapt to that if we want to still commit to having really small schools? And then really unleash the creative out of the box thinking, like, maybe there's something that's quite a bit different from just either you have a fully self-contained classroom for the day, or you have a fully self-contained classroom that has 2 grades put into it. Is there something that is mornings in their single grades, and afternoons in mixed grades? Is there, something that strikes me is that a really small PE class is maybe not that great. Like, maybe there's specials that would work better with bigger classes. Maybe, who knows? There's all sorts of different ways. And it seems like to have a committee really look at that could be really helpful. And that sort of tabletop exercise, and looking at it more from a situation of what can we do? What potential does this open up for us, rather than just the restrictive mode of, here's what we have to do after the budget has failed, and we're trying to scramble to come up with a budget that we can pass next year. So that strikes me on sort of that piece. And then I think absolutely with the, I really appreciate Andy's perspective and Rebecca's of the language of closing a school versus, and especially from these children's, point of view, like, how do we get the message out that this is all about how we can better serve our children?
I want to say overall, I think this is a promising proposal. I like that it doesn't hit the district all at once with dramatic changes, but it also sets out a very clear pathway to follow to make changes that will allow us to be sustainable for a long time. And that's my primary interest here, is that I absolutely know that we could probably kick the can down the road another year or two by nibbling around the edges. I think we could. I don't see that trajectory going on for another 5 years or another 10 years. And, you know, my kids are young. They're gonna be here for, you know, another 10 years. And I want to make sure the district is in a strong, healthy, stable position in 10 years. That's what I'm really interested in. And I feel like in consolidating campuses, that helps us be on a financial footing that we can afford to invest in the things that are really important to us. I would so much rather spend money on outdoor education than maintaining a fleet of boilers across 3 schools, right? I just would, right? Given the choice. And I think this is a path that could potentially get us there. I think this is a uniquely good year for setting us on the path because we have some surplus that we can use to offset this first year where there's going to need to be an enormous amount of planning, an enormous amount of thinking about the implementation particulars. I'm sure there will be money that will need to be spent to, you know, make the old elementary school classrooms current. Like there's absolutely going to be money there, right? Of course, you're going to need a playground. You're going to need toilets in the younger grades, right? There are things, there's money, there are capital costs that will be incurred as part of this. And also that work can't happen overnight. So I appreciate that this has a several year focus. It feels doable. It doesn't feel insurmountable for any one year. I take Rebecca's concern seriously that it is churn, right? Things are changing and that is hard. Like change is hard. Change is hard for everybody. Change is hard for the kids. Change is hard for the adults. Change is hard for everyone who will have to work extra hard in order to do this implementation work, right? Like that's not something that teachers are doing in their everyday work today. That's a lot to ask of people. But I also think that it's a lot easier to do it if we plan ahead and we have time in front of us. And I feel like if we don't do something like this, I'm not saying we need to do necessarily exactly this, but if we don't do something like this this year, I think we'll be forced into it in a future year where the economic conditions for softening the first year cost may not nearly be as good as it is this year. The fact that we have some surplus to say, let's give us a year buffer to figure it all out now that we've made the decision to do some big things. That is a precious gift of time. And I feel like we should use it responsibly. I also think too, we got to be careful that we don't use this time to decide to kick the can down the road. I've seen this happen in other organizations where you're like, okay, we're going to do something big and we got a year to figure it out. And then at the end of that year, they're like, oh man, doing something big is hard. Let's spend another year planning and having committees. And so I really feel like it's incumbent upon us to take this seriously. I know we will, but I'm just saying it out loud. If we say we're going to do this, it's a big change. It's a lot of work for the entire community. I think we should commit to a multi-year path. I think a multi-year path is the right choice. Most of the stuff we discussed was too big to happen all in 1 year. Too much change. And I think we heard that from the community and we heard it from teachers. And I think that was a very fair and good response. But I do think that this is the year to commit to it from a purely like ability to soften the blow to the taxpayers, which I think will allow us to be able to have the time to do these things. This is a great year for it and we should do it.
Terry.
I echo what Nate has just said, with a couple of additions. Some 5 years or so ago, Mike Harris was the temporary superintendent for you folks. And he made the observation back then that we had more real estate than what we really needed. That was a long time ago. And so we have finally arrived at a point where we've said, yep, Dr. Harris, I think you're right. I think this is a little slower than I would like to have seen, but it is planned, and being planned is better than not being planned. And it's in the best interest of the children. It's documented widely, and I encourage everyone that has some angst about multi-age or multi-grade classrooms. I think multi-grade is probably a better term. To go and read the literature. Yes, there's a few naysayers out there, but the literature is overwhelmingly supportive of this particular move. And yeah, we need to be decisive.
But
Yeah, I'd like to add something about the multi-grade. I have also talked to people that have dealt with, like, this was just their experience. And they're like, kids turned out fine, they turned out great, they went on and did great things. What we're really talking about here is transitioning to multi-year.
Yeah.
And I think change is always hard, but I think we do it right. I think that's gonna make a big difference. It didn't work the first time, but we learned some things from the last time around. But I think in the long run, 10 years from now, it's just gonna be I would think it's just gonna be part of the experience of our children. And I don't think it's gonna overall impact their ultimate, their educational experience. With that said, I wanna comment on Andy's comment that maybe as a board, we could write something up about what our thoughts are that he can take to his classroom and say, this is what the board is thinking. This is why they're thinking about these things. And, if he feels that that's an appropriate way to, attack that, maybe it'd be helpful for them to understand and using words like we're going to enhance our educational experience. And it may be hard at first or hard to grasp, but we'll get there. But I'm also sort of supportive of we talked about multi-age classrooms last year, and the comments were, we need a year to think about it. And I do feel that we have been thinking about it for a year, and we're thinking about it earlier this year, so we still have time to make the plan. So I would be supportive of moving the time frame up a year, and at least looking at that more seriously. Because I do feel strongly that 10 people show up that vote down our budget, a status quo budget, we're really going to put ourselves in a predicament, and we're going to have less time to think about that.
We don't want to be a coach.
And I don't think we want to put ourselves in, I think that's a bad situation for us. But if we commit to it potentially now, we're buying ourselves 4 or 5 more months to come up with that plan.
Karen.
So I think, we're talking about resources. The most important resource in an educational organization are the teachers. There's no doubt. I was in the classroom. Yeah. And so, I sat in science class for 6th graders, which is like what they did with me. Most people would say 6th graders would never do. That's a result of the teacher, right? And kids were going through questions, right? I walked out of there thinking about things I'd never thought about before in my entire life, right? Sitting around with, what do we have? Soap, tuning fork, oil, water, cups, that's it, right? And I think following up with Clem said, I think, I've hammered you guys a couple of times pretty hard. I think the administrative team could have come up with this proposal on our own, just sitting on the table. But I think it would be good for the board to write like a letter to the community and the teachers, kids, and community kind of what the direction is now. I want to refocus us on education. So finally, I'm hearing that being discussed here, and that's important. And bringing those conversations into these board meetings a little bit more. But I think a well-crafted letter would go a long way in reestablishing confidence. So I think confidence is been weakened going through all this.
I think you definitely, I'm gonna go with any plan, you have to make sure you have your teaching staff or your staff, full staff in support.
Doug?
would echo the community letter as well. I'd be a little bit concerned if we went directly from the board to the teacher to the kids without parent involvement.
Want to give folks who haven't spoken yet a chance to speak? So I'm thinking about Sarah and then Vanessa and Dave online. So,
Well, I did just want to ask Clem, did you mean that you would go for multi-age starting next year?
Yes.
So I guess I'm not on board with starting it next year because I think it's going to take time for the teachers to understand it better and figure out how they're going to use it for their students in the best way for learning opportunities. I didn't love the D3 one. I really, in my heart, love the D2 ones where we would keep all of the elementary kids together. But after looking at it, I thought that that was probably the best way to keep each community in their homes. So I liked that it seemed like there was a compromise there to keep both communities closer to home so that you didn't have the big transportation issues across the district. I do still wonder about the community piece of it because I feel like there is still a big community piece that we bought into as the Rivendell Interstate School District of being a community. And I do feel like it's best if we can start in the beginning, but the transportation issue is so I guess with that said, I went with D3 too. But in my heart, I still feel like there's a community piece that we're missing. And it's not anybody's fault. It's the way that the district is laid out, that there's no way to do that without little kids going halfway across the district. And also for the parents that have more than one or two children, if you have one at Westshire and one on the other side of the district, it is really difficult. So I think it's the best in that scenario. And for the multi-age, I have never personally done multi-age, but I can see benefits for both ends of the range for the kids that are maybe need a little bit more time and the kids that are on the upper end of the spectrum, that maybe there's a way to be able to serve them better. And also I was thinking of the third and fourth grade, not the way the third and fourth grade works, where there are two different teachers with two different content area specialties. So that is there a possibility, maybe it's not just multi-age, maybe there's some kind of, I don't know what the word is, some kind of something in the middle that would work for everyone. And I'm not really sure how to word it, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah, in my notes sort of the charge that we would give to committees, it strikes me that this idea of saying, all right, we're gonna have Westshire continue on as a small elementary school on this end of the district, giving a local school for that community, and continue to have elementary school locally for Fairleigh and Orford. I think we then need to add the charge of renewing Rivendell's commitment to bringing all four towns and children from all four towns together to create one community. And maybe there are, any number of ways that you commit to saying we're going to have kindergarten field trips that have the kindergartens from each school. We're going to have, anyway, all the way through all the opportunities that we could be looking at to bring the children together, starting at a young age, while still maintaining the elementary school. So that thing strikes me. And then the other thing that I just want to say that I think has really struck all of us as a board, and then I apologize, I didn't follow up yet with the board, that I did as an individual and as chair of the board, follow up with a letter to the Westshire staff answering their questions. And then I did meet with them, because we can't really craft a letter as a board as a whole, without meeting to do that. So I think we're going to have to figure out a way to meet to have a letter that we would send to the community. But clearly a strength that the strength that we have in our district is the teachers all the way through in all of our schools. And that then becomes something that we can leverage. And so there may be really creative ways to teach the children really well in each of our schools that involve mixing ages in different ways that we haven't thought of, and that our teaching staff and the communities can draw on those ideas and create them themselves. So I think empowering a committee to really look at that would be great. Vanessa and Dave Rickert, would love to hear from you folks.
Yeah, I kind of, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I kind of agree with Clem. I would like to see this maybe process accelerated a little bit. And you know, the other thing I don't agree with this proposal is all the numbers I look at really point to one thing. If there's a school that should close, it should be Westshire. And the reason for that is we have 27 adults in that school serving 74 kids at this point. It has just gotten too small. I don't see how it's ever going to get any bigger. I think you're hoping against evidence that it's going to grow in any significant way. Kathy, you sent me today our per pupil numbers for the state. We're number one. We're number one. So if we don't reduce the number of adults that we have per student, we're still going to be number one, no matter what you do with bricks and mortar. So I agree with the approach, you know, a multi-step approach. I think it could be a little bit faster. I think these kids are more resilient than we give them credit for, having had 4 of them myself. And but I disagree with the idea of closing Samuel Morey. When I plotted I took the district, all the addresses of families in the district, and plotted on a map. It's really clear where the center of gravity is in the district, and it's around Fairleigh and Orford. It's just not rational. It's not logical, and we're creating all this additional complexity and pain when the answer really to this thing is pretty simple. That school is just too small, and it's not going to get any bigger. I know it's harsh. It's going to upset people, but that when I look at the numbers, that's just the way it is. So that's my 2 cents.
There could be some school choice at the elementary level where maybe some of those Samuel Morey kids would then go to Westshire versus to the. So there could be a way of maybe a few more of those kids going to Westshire potentially.
Yeah, I do want to. I do feel like I should reply to David just briefly. Maybe not in quite the quite acerbic terms, but I think the different building locations have pluses and minuses. I think all of us could probably think of some minuses of Samuel Morey's exact location vis-a-vis other transportation things right next door. And also the conditions of the buildings vary wildly. And so, I think, David's certainly right that the majority of the population is on that side of the district. But I think, a charitable look would show things on both sides of that equation.
I just want to add that I completely agree with David on Westshire. I find it painful to think of any school closing, but I think that to me makes more sense. I am warming up to the idea of multi-age classrooms, as I expressed more than 2 years ago now. I'm a product of that, and it was a disaster, similar to probably what a lot of kids have dealt with going through COVID in their educational experience. I do believe that our reasons for doing it, while we like to say it's about creating the best educational community and environment, it is definitely being done because of money. And I want to not hide that fact. I think it's important that we recognize that this is a financial decision too, and that's important. I was always open at the beginning in August when we started to the idea of closing a school. My comment was about the academy. Clearly that didn't make it even as a cut because of the enormous cost of doing that So I'm kind of happy to see that, but at the same time, I do not like the idea of closing Samuel Morey. Fairly, I think, will revolt when it comes to that. They will not be. I don't think they're going to handle that well at all. I know that's true for West Fairleigh and Berkshire as well, but anyway, so that's sort of my position on it.
I have to say that it did surprise me, and you know, granted, we have not heard from the entire community in these community forums, but we have heard from a lot of people and a spread of people across the district, parents, community members that don't have children, teachers, and what struck me was the degree to which sort of that option D3 of closing Samuel Morey and moving that population to the academy bubbled up. My take on it was that we have, and this is conversations that I've had in addition, but a lot of that feedback, that we have a community in West Fairleigh and Berkshire who dearly love their school. And so we have that, and they love the sense of community, they love the teachers, and they love the location, the facility itself and that location. And for those on the other end of the district, we haven't heard as strong and maybe it's because they initially didn't feel as threatened, but we haven't heard that strong love of the Samuel Morey building and location. And we have heard a strong sense of wanting to be able to keep the sense of community among those two towns. And then the other thing that I think we heard quite loud and clear is that parents from that end of the district, from Fairleigh and Orford, are definitely not in love with driving to Westshire for education. So I think that it becomes a compromise in terms of those things. I wonder, having heard what we've heard so far, if we were to, because it seems like the other factor that we haven't entered into at all yet is the actual physical buildings, their projected capital maintenance repair costs, and then the other is the which Nancy, you had sent out, at least to me, I don't remember if it went to anyone else, that there is state legislation linked to school buildings that are built with state support for construction. So Westshire and the upper building of the academy were new construction that was done when Rivendell formed with state aid from the state of Vermont. And so there is a clause in there that says if a district were to go ahead and sell a building that they built with that state aid, they would then have to take from their proceeds of sale to pay back the state if they're no longer using that building for education. So it seems like that there are several additional layers of what it would look like to close Samuel Morey or to close Westshire that would need to be investigated to be able to make a more complete decision on greater information. Dob, and then Terry.
I think your point, Cassie, to having an implementation committee would be necessary because there's just too many permutations now.
Yeah.
To make a proper choice.
Mm-hmm.
Question, has the Vermont School Evaluation Group been through and do we have a report from them?
So we do have a report. They gave it to us last week, but recommended not sharing it until the webinar to explain the report could be held. They held it today. We really are waiting for the recording. Actually, no, they held it 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah, or a week or two ago,
Yeah.
but the recording will be available on Friday.
Yeah.
And it really, there's a lot of information in the recording that you made in the webinar that makes understanding the report and informs the report. So I think my recommendation is to watch the webinar first and then look at the report.
And we can send that out.
yeah, as soon as I get the links, we can send it out. And then we can present the reports. But I do think it's very important to watch the webinar first.
Got it. So that's information that'll be coming soon. It'll be available
Yes.
to us soon.
Yes. It is a first step. And that's also what's in the webinar and the explanation of what the steps are in Act 76. And how the state is proceeding with this information.
I feel like I'm sort of hearing three things that we might want to do as next steps. And one is to, well, 1, 2, 3. So 1 and 2 would be to develop a charge for an implementation committee to look at the multi-age classrooms, and then a separate committee to look at the closing an elementary school piece. And then the third is to develop a letter to go to the community to say, you know, here's where we are at. And knowing that as a board, we have to meet in public session. I wonder if it would make sense we could have individuals or committees draft some language for each of those three things. We could meet, and we could do it by Zoom. Hopefully it wouldn't have to take us too long to be able to say, here's our draft language for each of these three things, and be able to, and we could do those and wait till our next board meeting. We're not in a total rush. Our next meeting is early December, right? Or we could do that in a special meeting before that point. And if we thought that the letter to the community was particularly important, we could do that in a pretty quick Zoom meeting and say, you know, here's our letter to the community. And then we could approve of a task force, a charge for each of those committees.
I think I would just add, it would be nice to also have a direction to go for next year, leaving, so that we can start planning to bring you a draft.
The next board meeting's in 3 weeks.
In 3 weeks, right? As the person who's always looking for the compromise, I wonder if we were to say that by next year, we want to be ready to implement. We want to look at an implementation of multi-age classrooms. And we would like to see the first steps of that reflected in next year's budget. Because one thing that strikes me about that is it doesn't need to be an all at once thing. Closing an elementary school does, like, you know, you can't say, oh, we're gonna half close it. And I mean, I suppose you could, but that makes less sense. But I would be very open to seeing, just as Westshire did even this year, and having the 3rd, 4th grade classes run parallel to each other, it feels like that is a step towards multi-age. And I would love to see personally, so that I also wonder if it's a compromise, to see something in next year's budget that would reflect that. And it's maybe programmatic, it's maybe some staff reduction, so that we're sort of easing into the staff reduction that we would be envisioning by the end of, by the following year. So anyway, that's a thought that I have. I don't know if that feels like enough clarity, if they're all of us agree, and if it feels like enough clarity for the administrative team going forward.
No.
Yeah, go ahead. No, yeah, no, that's a talk there. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Okay.
Sorry.
I really view this. I feel like it would be hard for me to support a status quo budget for next year if it wasn't part of a bigger plan that we had decided upon. Not that we had decided that we would decide on a plan, but that we decided on a plan. And the first year of that plan is status quo, so that we can hash out the specific details but not the fact that we are doing these things. And I think one of those things that has to be hashed out is, you know, is where are we driving in terms of the school closure? I don't think you can leave that up in the air. I think that's asking for trouble down the road, and I'd rather rip the Band-Aid off. You know, as people have pointed out, like this whole process, because it has to happen in public and in public meetings, as it should, necessarily makes everyone feel uncomfortable, right? Like it's a lot of upheaval. I would be really uncomfortable if, think about how uncomfortable it would be at work if your bosses sat around all day in the lunchroom with you sitting there being like, I don't know, do we employ them next year or not? Like, that'd be really uncomfortable. That's an uncomfortable thing to put a community through. I feel bad that it has to happen. I feel just as strongly that democracy requires that it happen in the open and in public, and I'm proud to serve in that capacity, but it's not the sort of thing that we want to do over and over and over again if we can help it, right? And so I really feel like the community is already in upheaval. We've already whacked the hornet's nest. We might as well endure a few more stings and hash this thing out, right? I'd rather just not drag out the actual big decisions for another year. Like I'd say, let's make the big decisions in this budget season, give the administration and the schools a really clear mandate of where we want to be in 3 years. Say, you've got the time to do it. We're not going to do any major changes year one. I think that's a fair compromise, right? Like, these are big changes. It's going to take time. But I do feel really strongly that we can't just say, this first year, we're going to keep the budget the same and we're going to work on building committees to decide what to do in the future, because I feel like we're deciding what to do in the future now. And I'd rather make a decision and move forward, everyone in the same direction, feeling confident about where we're going to be in 3 years. Maybe not all agreeing, right? We're probably not all going to come to agreement. But I'd rather get it done.
How about multi-age in 2 years? So, maybe the idea is we combine a certain amount of classes, but maybe the first year is a chunk. And then year 2 would be another chunk. And then
that's what I was trying to say, but you said it much more succinctly.
Word chunk. Think word chunk.
And then that commitment to a year 3 of closing.
And the reason also I say that we're gonna think about a consolidated classroom in a certain grade, maybe it's 3rd and 4th, whatever it may be. And then we're gonna work with the teachers, and then we're gonna decide maybe that's not gonna work for that class. So we may want to pull that one off the table and take more time until we develop that one specifically.
I think we have competing interests. We have a strategic sort of plan for the district and its sustainability, and then the annual budget, composition of what we have to do for just the budget itself. And considering the budget itself, maybe we can look at the things we can do for the strategic plan that don't affect that annual budget this year. And say, okay, well, nothing that we're doing this year is going to affect the line item, but we can do some things that move us forward.
So I think I'm hearing 2 slightly different approaches there. One is saying, let's move towards multi-age in a 2-step process, some this coming year, some the next year. I think I'd be willing to, and to throw that to the teachers and the administrators who are in the schools to say, what is going to make the most sense in your school with your children, with your teachers. And then the other that I'm sort of hearing from Dov and Nate is to say, it's okay to not make any budget changes, and we can be making programmatic changes that are in response to the strategic plan. I don't know. Do we want to? Here, I guess I would like to just get a feel of it. So Clem's proposal, which is to do phase into multi-age over a 2-year time frame. If people will do rather than a complete show of hands up and down, let's do a thumb up, thumb middle, thumb down of how you feel about that idea. So
exactly, does it mean like
Yeah, I think we need more
bit
information.
1 year and then a little bit the next?
mhm. And maybe it's like, what is the most appropriate first step towards multi-age? And I guess in terms of staff reduction, like reducing 1 FTE teacher Or maybe there's some other, creative way that it's done, but at least to have a tangible step that's reflected in the budget, going forward. Is that, anyone clear? So thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs middle for how people feel about that.
I'm confused already.
Oh, no, I thought I was, all right, Glenn, you say it more succinctly, because I'm not doing it very well,
Well-
and then we gotta move on.
No, I see, I guess I'm more in the camp that I take what I've heard from the teachers, which is, I haven't yet found a teacher who said they feel it's impossible to do well. I found a range of teachers who have said, yeah, like either I've done it before, right? There are some out there, or I would really like some training and to build a plan before I actually implement this. And I think that's a reasonable thing to ask. And I also think that, it is certainly possible, like you could imagine a world in which you could find appropriate training and planning time between now and next school year. I also think it's possible that with the number of teachers and classrooms that we're talking about, that wouldn't be a feasible timeline to make those changes. And I also do think that if you're going to have a restructuring, which is a kind of a bloodless word for, reducing the number of teachers, that's employed by the district in these positions, I feel it's better to do it, at one time rather than dribbling it out over time.
I agree.
And to do it once everyone is fully prepared. I don't want to feel like we're rushing the professional development to get this into place for next year. I don't think that's worth it. I'd rather do it well. Or, at the very least, to attempt to do it well. And I think a full year of time, along with some budget resources for professional development, will give us the best chance possible of doing it really well.
So are you saying you're not ripping the Band-Aid off?
I'm saying rip it off the second year.
Wait a
No,
year,
you're not
then
really
we'll stop.
ripping off.
Yeah. Right.
I feel like we've put everybody through this thing this year. And we're gonna put them all through it again. We basically do nothing. And I do again feel that last year was our status quo. And I felt like we in this group said, we're gonna do this. This is our status quo budget. Next year, we're gonna do something different. And I'm just fearful we're gonna get to next year and we're gonna be in the same boat. Or again, we're gonna go back to the voters are gonna vote down and we're gonna lose 3 months because they voted down our budget proposal, the status quo budget proposal.
Well, and Clement, I think that's a very fair, I feel sort of the same way when I hear people talking about committees for study, right? Like I'm a little allergic to committees, just like as a personal thing, like not a, no shade on any good committees you may be a part of. I am a little concerned. I think the year is good if we put it to good use. I think the year is really bad if by the end of the year, the committees come back and say, well, we think it would be nice if we just didn't do anything. It would change, not changing things would be a lot easier. That is a fear I have, right, of delaying it. Giving a year for professional development, study, and implementation. But I don't know. I hate to say I'm optimistic, but I think I'm reasonably optimistic that given a clear mandate from the board saying these things are happening, we're not signing up for like a 1-year budget. This is in effect like a 3-year arc. And by saying next year's status quo, we are saying that we are cutting, whatever, the plan turns out to be in year 2 in order to implement this. Those trains have left the station. It's not open for renegotiation. That I think that's a very good message we can take to the voters to say, we have a plan. Here it is in black and white. We're going to do, all the necessary and, responsible educational things in year 1 to make sure that our kids are still well educated. Year 2, we're going to implement this. Throughout year 1 and year 2, we're going to be making the capital enhancements to, the academy building to allow, the Samuel Moore population to shift 1,500 feet down the road, to a building and facilities that will be refreshed and ready for them. And because that's not going to take 6 months. I would be shocked if it took a year and a half or 2 years, right? And so we need that time. And but I do think that's a message we can sell to the voters, because it's true. Only if we believe it's true, which I hope we believe it's true.
Yeah, I want to say that, you know, we use the term status quo just because that is, you know, the term of like, ultimately, we're trying not to reduce staff and things of that nature through that. But if you're using surplus money and we're going through, you know, line items and reducing further, I mean, we're looking at a $350,000 increase, which is less than 3%. So you go to the voters, you say, this year, you know, we're maintaining staffing, but we've got a budget that's less than 3% increase. We've got a plan for the following year that will reduce it yet again and keep it in that same area. And then, you know, in year 3, you know, we have this additional plan that is going to really allow our district to expand opportunities for kids.
Terry and then Terry.
Yeah, I was gonna say what Barrett just said, that the status quo doesn't mean, you know, we just back on money, but, and then what you said, and you snuck it in there, but I think part of that status quo has gotta be, money for planning time and professional development. And the term professional development is loaded, because there's good professional development, there's bad professional development. And in Germany, what's good and what's bad is not always easy. And I think that needs to be discussed. Anyway, so the status quo isn't the status quo. We need time and money to do the planning. Some of that planning can be done now in a hypothetical sort of way. I've got maps of the academy buildings. I'm ready to walk around and see what this would look like, right? There's lots of, you know, we can make the list of all the things that we can do to get ready for this. So making a list is the first place to go, and starting the planning, and then taking the steps. We're gonna need, I think, administrative time where we work together and we hash this stuff out to make the list. Who's doing what? We could, you know, we need to hire somebody to do some of the planning work, you know, get contractors and, you know, what would this look like? We've got to invest some resources this first year in that planning process. And I think we could probably save enough money to do that without status quo, not status quo. We've got to think about this professional development and planning time, lots of meeting time among the admin team, talking to teachers to figure out how to do this.
Yeah, I mean, you
I think
have
that's
to get your staff.
I think that's important. I didn't realize, because status quo a month ago was 10%.
Yeah.
So this is completely different status quo. If 3%, essentially, if our directive is 3% for next year, I think I could get behind that.
So
This is a modified
to be clear though, that is using a one-time surplus.
Surplus.
That means is if we don't want a giant increase the year after,
We have to.
We have to be committed to this plan.
right, be committed to the plan.
Mhm.
Okay.
Terry.
I can get behind.
You know, the duck dropped, and that's a reference that none of you are old enough to know what that means, probably. When Nate talked about timeline, and Clem, I agree with you. I really would like to see this accelerated a little bit. But when you take a look at this thing, you think about mothballing or repurposing a building and so forth, and the transition to get ready over across the river. They really need this much time to get it done. As much as I hate to delay it, I would adopt this plan as it's laid out and say, yeah, get the committees running that figure out how to make it happen educationally, because I believe that it can, but this gives them enough time to get that done. As I sat here, the longer I've thought about it, the more it's clear they need some time. And they need some time, but we need to be committed, and the school needs to be committed to get it done. Don't make it a question mark. Those first graders that we heard painfully about, are going to be just fine. I know I've been one of them. And they are going to get an opportunity to be in a great new revitalized building and be part of where the big people are. So they'll be fine. So it's just a question of getting it done. Let's move forward.
All right, I am reading in the group, that we're coming towards consensus. Oh, except for Dave Ricker. Dave Ricker, go ahead.
I have a very basic question. So we lay out a 3-year plan tonight, let's just say. So the board composition changes over the years. Can the future board say no? I mean,
Yeah. Future board can say it. Sure.
the future board can say we don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I think it behooves us to have the letter that goes out to the whole community and continue to engage the whole community in this process. So that it doesn't feel like a plan that has come from this board acting in isolation, but feels like it's a plan that has come from this board reaching out to our constituents and all stakeholders. So, and you're right, like it could all change.
Meanwhile, Barrett's looking for clarity on this year's budget, so did we say we want Barrett to consider the 3-year plan as a guideline without saying that we can't be on, in fact, we have to vote each year with each component? And the makeup of the board, like, David, could change?
I think what I'm hearing as consensus is yes to this proposal as a package. So it's not.
So I'm not hearing consensus on that at all, Kathy.
Right,
if
okay,
we have
so
not voted on that,
sorry, James.
Sorry, we need an official vote on that. It's not just consensus, stated.
And I guess, Dave, I was sort of wrapping up your statement about Westshire, and I also know that, we have 2 really key board members who aren't, but we have 2 board members who aren't here and who have ideas as well, and I guess I am sort of out there saying, like, in looking at year 3, we're looking at it as closing and elementary school, and what's on the table right now is Samuel Morey, but maybe it would emerge that the better plan is Westshire. I don't know, but maybe that makes it too messy, or maybe we should just vote. All right, let's vote. All those, what's that?
Are we voting on Samuel Morey closing? Because it does make a difference, I think. I do think in the end, it will make a difference on the options that we made.
Yeah, I would say, let's vote on this proposal as presented. That involves developing these implementation committees and being open to the possibility that maybe the implementation committee is gonna like work and say, this isn't gonna work. And then we need to think of something else. But at the moment, this is the thing that's on the table until we would have an implementation committee come and say, this isn't gonna work. Does that make sense?
So we're voting on further research into this plan.
Right, this is the direction that we want the administrative team to move in. We're not voting on closing Samuel Morey, we're voting on this being the direction that we want the
That's a
administrative.
guideline.
All right, I would entertain a motion to accept this plan as the direction that we want the administrative team to move in.
So moved.
Moved by Terry, seconded by Doug. All those in favor? That is 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? That's 1. All those abstaining?
That's 2, actually, Kathy.
Oh, two, Vanessa and Rebecca and Clem. Are you, where are you? You have to pick one. You have to vote in favor or opposed or abstention.
Exploring further, I'm not in favor of like committing to it.
Right.
I feel like we don't have enough information or enough community teacher buy-in to commit.
Right.
Does the 9 of us, or however many of us can't make that decision?
And the ultimate decision will be made by the voters
Right.
at the budget meeting. Like, we're not, in essence, we have very little power in this.
I would support this thing if we're not naming an elementary school that we were gonna close. If we were going to say an elementary school, but we were specific that we're going to explore our options in that regard, then I would be in support of this.
I'd like to add to that consideration of closing an elementary school, not definitely, but considering it
Right.
for the 3rd year. And so that's a step a little bit away from Dave there.
Yeah.
Need to read this or?
I want to put it to the administrative team. Does that feel like?
I think you vote on the proposal that's been presented to you. If it's a no, it's a no. It's a yes, it's a yes. If you want to abstain, you abstain. You have to make a decision.
All right, I'm changing.
Right. Your
So
vote
it's
is
committing to the
favor.
proposal
In favor.
or committing
That's
to
fine.
furthering the research on that proposal?
Committing to the proposal. There's
Right.
going to be further research as
part of it.
it, but committing to it. Like, I don't think you can go to a town meeting and sell, budgets without having, some sort of plan like this moving forward. Like, otherwise it's the same thing every year. And I can't do that every year.
If the committees that Kathy and Barrett have referred to are formed sooner than later, then they can inform the budget presentation in March. And if those committees are saying, yes, absolutely, we can do this, or no, this is gonna take 4 years to do, then that can inform the voters. And then the voters are ultimately the ones that are gonna decide, yes, we accept what you're saying, we're gonna support you in this and we're gonna go forward, or they're gonna say, no, we want something more drastic.
and ultimately, the voters are gonna vote on the budget for next year.
Yes.
But we feel that our position would be much stronger in presenting a budget next year if it's with a package of, and here's the plan for the following year and the following year.
Forward looking.
Which is what our voters have asked for.
Yes, I honestly don't think you would pass a budget without that.
Right.
Having heard what I've heard from people.
All right.
But I just want to say, I think there would be community members out there, obviously those in Fairleigh, that would vote this down, knowing that the 3rd year they're gonna see Samuel Morey close. So just to put that out there.
And yet they wouldn't be voting on that. They would be voting on the budget. And I think one of the things that we would also have to really work out in that, charging that committee with is, what is the process for closing an elementary school? I don't think the articles of agreement are completely clear on that. And I think, we as a board would want to say, like, how do we do it? Do we have a special meeting that we bring to the voters? Do we as a board just do all of our community research and then make a decision? I think we would want clarity on what our process would be. Yeah. All right, the vote as it stands right now is 5 in favor, 2 opposed, and an abstention. All right, 6 in favor, 2 opposed. There, we don't often have split votes, folks. That was a good conversation, and do we feel like we got a direction to head in? I would be willing to draft a letter to the community, reporting on this and inviting those who are interested in serving on an implementation committee to come forward. Do we want to think about a time to have a brief Zoom meeting to see such a letter?
Good. Thanksgiving coming up.
We got Thanksgiving coming up. I think it should be before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It could be as soon, I think I've got a meeting already Thursday. I don't know that I can pull it off for tomorrow night. I have a meeting Thursday.
Soccer banquet.
Soccer banquet, okay. It could be next Monday or Tuesday evening. Yeah? All right, does anyone have a preference of Monday versus Tuesday?
That's okay.
Monday, aren't we meeting?
Yeah,
with
not
Westshire?
Monday. I have like triple booked on Monday.
Triple booked on Monday.
And I need you to come to help me.
Yeah.
One of them.
Oh,
Supposed to be there.
Yeah.
oh, how have I forgotten that?
Okay.
Sounds like
Did I know that?
Tuesday might be better.
Can we do this?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that
Is there a Zoom option?
Or is that?
Zoom, 100% Zoom, and hopefully very quick.
Or a commission, whoever will show up.
I think just the whole board, anyone who can, and like that way we can put the letter out there, everyone can see it, and then we can have a board
Yeah.
meeting where we say,
Tuesday.
yes, we approve of this.
But we wouldn't actually approve the letter for the following.
Well, you could approve it.
We can prove it.
You can approve the meeting
As long as you have a
next to.
quorum.
Yeah, so
You
you need a quorum.
need to be there. You need to be there. Somebody, you need to be
What,
there.
what time, Captain?
Should we do it 6:30 next Tuesday?
6:30, the 21st.
All right, and do we want at that time to also try to draft a list of tasks for 2 committees?
I think,
All right, I'll put together a draft for that as well, unless someone else feels like they're ready to do that.
I think that's a good use of time.
What's that?
So don't everybody volunteer all at once.
Yeah, right. All right, well, why don't I check in, I'll work with you, Barrett, on what that should look like, and if anyone else has input, just let me know, okay? All right, thank you. All right. So that, I'm sort of like, here we are. Now we get to approve a resignation.
Okay, we have, one resignation and one nomination. The resignation is for our third grade teacher at Samuel Morey, Sarah Townsend. Who cited personal reasons for leaving to resign.
When would it be effective?
Been effective for, since last week.
Okay.
You're just approving a resignation that's already open.
I would accept a motion to approve the resignation. Moved by Dow, seconded by Sarah. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, passed by show of hands. And overnight trips, we have the National Honor Society.
I do have a nomination.
Oh, you have a nomination.
Which I know it's not on there. that's-
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So I have a nomination for the long-term teaching position at Westshire, or I should say A, because there's gonna be multiple. For Melissa Artisan Trenville.
Okay, so I would accept the motion to approve that. Motion by Sarah, seconded by Rebecca. All those in favor? Those opposed? All right. And the replacement of the third grade teacher, Samuel Morey?
Well, currently it's a combination of Mr. Lindeman and Mr. Buzzell. I'm kind of splitting that right now, but we haven't posted and hoping to get somebody.
All right. Okay, the National Honor Society overnight trip. That is a trip similar to what has happened in other years, right? Do we need any more information on?
And yeah, what I've been hearing,
Mhm.
but
Right, I think that is that, so I would entertain a motion to approve of the National Honor Society overnight trip to Upper Baker Pond on November 30th. I don't think there's gonna be any swimmings, we don't need lifeguards. All right, would someone like to, Rebecca, and seconded by Nate, all those in favor of approving that trip? Passed by show of hands.
She's out of her mind.
All right, annual report, I put that on there because we now have Derica Downing is going to be the editor for the annual report, pulling together all of the reports and proofreading them alike. And she asked the question, do you want to do it as you have in recent years where it is put on the website electronically, and then hard copies are available for those who request them, as opposed to what we had done up until 3 years ago of mailing a hard copy of the annual report to all residents of our 4 towns. And I thought it was worth, and she raised that question, I thought it was worth bringing to the board just for us to think about it as we have received this feedback for greater communication, especially with people who don't have access to internet in our towns. Doc,
Do we know the cost of mail order to speed of mail out?
Brenda, do you
did
have a sense of
get
that?
it, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking 2,500 copies of the report. We'd have to get a new estimate because we haven't done that in a number of years, right? And plus the postage for all of that.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah,
I propose maybe a letter to everybody so that they know, and then each town hall would get a certain stack of them. So that they know you can get your own at town hall, you just pick it up, and to explain, we're saving significant amount, maybe you get the estimate anyway, so we say, we're saving $25,000, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but we're saving $25,000 by not sending it to absolutely everybody.
And I think, or even a postcard.
Yeah.
Postcard.
Even cheaper.
And box over.
Yeah, I just want to add that information has been put out in box holders to, tax, box for
Every year.
everyone in years past. We've saved the money of not printing. We make those hard copies available to the libraries, the district office, the town clerk's office. They do distribute some of those. It's very few, and I have had on my end, just the feedback I have gotten, is I have not had anyone complain that they haven't had access to the annual report.
and we also bring copies to the meeting. Yeah, but
So let's not break that.
we've collected.
Yeah, I move that we use Clem's suggestion, box holder notices, limited printing, and available online.
And it strikes me that is maybe what is more important, because we have a lot of change that we are discussing, that we want to get that information out, but that doesn't need to be in a full annual report. And the idea of, I know that Barrett and Brent are thinking about a newsletter to the whole 4 town communities, and that's where we should put our energy, is in that newsletter. And that can have in it, hey, the annual report, here's how you get it. Okay.
And I would think that this year we would have more interest in the annual report, given what we've just approved.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
One comment. Oh, no,
All right. So, yes, Doc?
just one quick comment on, I think one derivative coming out of meeting with the Fairleigh School Board, the select board, was that we thought that they can comment also in their newsletters, like say, for each of the 4 towns.
That we could
Put some information in their
Yes.
newsletter.
yes, and then we could do that in the version
Yeah, that's
newsletter
great. Yeah,
as well, so that's there as well, yeah. All right, I don't think we actually have to vote on it because we're not changing our policy at all, but I just thought we would discuss that, so that sounds really good. That leads us to correspondence. Terry, you had to share with us,
Yeah, I have,
I'll pass these around.
pass those around. Just give me the top.
Give you one copy?
Give me one copy at the top. I talked about it. I went to the Vermont School Board Association Conference, in the end of October. I'm not going to go through the things that I have on here, but I've got 6 bullet points that are the takeaways from that meeting. It was interesting to look at this Act 125 there, and then also to attend that webinar that was held today. So I recommend that to you, although I'm not sure at the end of the day it's as clear, because the whole issue of Act 25 is such a mess. But the one takeaway here that I'd love to emphasize, and I'll give this to you, Brenda, is that communication was something that was really talked about, and that we need to communicate with our towns and with our electorate, and over communication shouldn't be a problem. The other thing is a policy that deals with everyone. It's also on that list. So if you have some questions, I'll be glad to flesh out. I've got piles of notes. Did not bore you.
Well, thank you, Terry.
Yeah.
Sir, thank you for doing.
Yeah, right,
Writing-
finish it,
writing this
right,
up.
like,
This is really helpful.
the issues that we are facing, we are not alone.
Oh, no, we are not alone.
And, it's like me that, and Nate was mentioning this as we were driving over, that, the fact that we negotiated our CBA last year means that we're not having to do that this year. And a lot of districts are facing that this year and the increase in health insurance and,
And no clue as to what kind of tax money they'll
And the-
actually get.
exactly.
Yeah. Imagine if you were like a multi-district trying to negotiate a CBA this year, right? Like,
Norwich is putting out some pretty flashy, presentation materials on how they're dealing with things.
yeah,
Um,
probably just with more money, like
Yeah.
usual.
yeah, Rebecca.
I'd like to kind of put a shout out, I guess, to the Rivendell theater production that just occurred. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, and to the end of the soccer season for both boys and girls. They did awesome, and I'd like to very much say we have some great people working in those areas.
Here.
Is there a way for us to do a board, sort of acknowledgement that goes to places like that, to the team that created the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, and the team, the people that made some of the sports teams as successful there? We ought to have some kind of an easy,
And also,
recognition
before I
certificate.
forget,
recognition certificate signed by Kathy on behalf of the board, you know. Just as-
Gatekeepers Organization of the French
Yes.
Invasion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
That brought all of us like, oh, we all get lots of French students.
Well, what a culturally enriching opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's doing this thing with the National Honor Society.
Yeah.
And that
She's a treasure.
She out of her mind.
she is an example of one of many treasures that we have and the level of sort of, I want to say like rebound from COVID that we have been able to have and seeing the theater come back full force, the French trip, that we get that from having really talented and really seasoned teachers who can keep going. So that, yeah, that's terrific.
Yeah, so is there like a?
Yeah,
Maybe there's something we could do as a board, just to recognize them and to say, we appreciate it, we've all
Yeah,
heard about what the great things
sort
you've
of
done.
some kind of a.
And for those that haven't been,
Right.
recognize them, say, hey.
Terry,
go
you
to
want to do
a
a little
theater
research on
performance.
that?
I'll do that.
All
I'll
right,
do that.
Terry's gonna do it.
I'll do that.
We'll bring that to that meeting
I'll
that
take it
we
on.
have a week from now, and we'll say, here's our little certificate that we want to, or, yeah,
All right.
you're gonna
I
research.
can find it, I
Great.
can find something, we
Great.
can figure something.
Fabulous.
So that
Anything
we-
else?
Yale and the soccer people.
French trip, theater, soccer. Maybe there's something else we're missing, but those are three
Those are big ones that
significant
really
accomplishments.
happen.
Yeah.
We'll figure it
Yeah.
out.
Anything else? Two things that I want to report on. One is that I did write a letter, as I said earlier, a letter in response to the Westshire staff. I will have Brenda share that with you. I had meant to do that before this meeting, and then I did meet with them to go over that. They shared with me another letter of recognition, so I will also share both of those with you, and I didn't get my act together to get those out to you. And then the other thing is I have had a conversation with Kathy McGrath of the Fairleigh Select Board. And I just thought if we were in the midst of all this, and especially if that option D3 was really bubbling to the surface from a number of different sources, that it was worth initiating conversation with the Fairleigh Select Board. And so I had a conversation with her about that. She was very appreciative of it, and I think it's important if we think that it's important to involve the Fairleigh Select Board in particular in any of that discussion. Anything else?
And with that said, did we make a plan to meet with the fair? I mean, just based on what our plan is, should we try to meet with them again?
Yeah, it might really be worth it. What she said is that they're meeting Thursday night.
This week?
Does that seem right? Anyway, I'll reach back out to her and see, yeah, I think it would be great to have at least a representative,
SMEs on
from the
this.
school board.
As
Yeah.
Vanessa has said,
Mhm.
they may have something to say about that.
Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
Yes, do we have the report for the condition of the academy building?
I shared it with you.
You did.
Yeah, so I shared it with you. It probably would have been your, school board email.
Oh,
I can share it. Those are the only ones I have. I can share it with you if you have,
Like-
a Gmail account.
yeah, regular Gmail account, please.
Yeah, so I shared it with all of the Orford school board members.
Okay,
And I shared it with Ann Green, and I believe she shared it with, Kathy's husband,
Mark,
Mark.
oh, Kathy Blanchard's husband, Mark,
Yes,
not Mark. He doesn't need to.
Lots of Kathy's.
Two Kathy's.
All right,
yeah,
I'll share it.
thank you.
anything else? All right, Doc,
Just one request for next month to have another ADA update. I think one more month would be helpful.
right,
Just,
so
I
yeah,
know that a
now,
lot of parents are looking for that.
right, so we're on to future agenda items, so the ADA for sure. Anything else?
Are there the three big things seem to have been addressed, ADA concerns.
Yeah, after the switches are done, I think that's.
Yeah, so maybe that's because we'll hear the good news with that being done.
Are there not other ones that are still?
No,
In the
not
line?
at this time. I mean, we're gonna have to consider long-term, facilities plans for the elevator and for, a backup, because we can't be in the situation where we can't get parts for anything. So, we actually had somebody come in, a company come in to measure out a chair lift that would go up and down the stair rail as a backup. We're also gonna ask them to give us a quote on an elevator lift, which means we would decommission the elevator as it currently exists, put in a lift, which is much more cost effective and the same size. So we could have a stair lift as a backup, an elevator lift for less money than replacing an entire elevator, like significantly.
So it sounds like, maybe you'll know more on that in a month and an update on that, or 3 weeks, an update on that would be helpful. Anything else for agenda items? All right. This has been a long meeting and we're not done yet. So now I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Moved by Nate, seconded by Clem. All those in favor? All right. Oh, yeah, thank you for being in favor. And so
Everyone, thank you.
that means that we will thank all of you for coming. Thank you very much. Thank all of you who are online for coming. And we will, so those of you who are online, please say farewell.